Ross and Elizabeth were a happy couple. Elizabeth was 12 years younger than him, although to them, age was just a number. The man worked in the company of his ex-partner's father, Victoria. Even though he had been the one who had made the decision to break up the relationship, her father was very happy with his efforts in the company. And Victoria liked to continue having him by her side. She hadn't gotten over the breakup and was constantly trying to get his attention, even though he only had eyes for his new partner. That situation was not something that pleased Elizabeth, who suffered from jealousy when Ross had to go on business trips with his ex. She had not imagined it. She had seen how she had insinuated to him on many occasions, which made her suspicious if her boyfriend would abandon her. Victoria had a lot of money, she was older, and she had known Ross for many years. And the young woman felt inferior next to her, as if at any moment her entire dream life full of love was going to be taken away from her. They had recently moved into a new house. It was a huge mansion with a garden, something she had always dreamed of. Ross told her that he would love for this to be the house where they would raise a family. That place was perfect in a rural area surrounded by nature. Elizabeth felt that she had everything to be happy. The man of her dreams, an idyllic home, but there was only one thing that prevented her complete happiness. Knowing that every so often Ross left her alone for a week while he traveled with his ex on business. On one occasion, she asked him to quit his job and look for another job closer. They didn't need that much money, and if they were to start a family, she wanted their future son to be able to have his father closer. He told her that he couldn't make that decision at that moment. He was at one of the key moments in his professional career. He had to take advantage of it to be able to have that dream life. But in a few years, he would leave his current job. Months later, while Ross was on one of those trips with Victoria, Elizabeth invited her landlady, Mrs. Duffin, to have coffee together, because she had asked her to go pick up some boxes that she had in the basement. Despite the short time shared, both had felt great complicity and trust. While they were chatting, the landlady asked her how she felt because she found her strange. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Elizabeth's face. She wasn't feeling very well, but it was for a good reason. She had just found out that she was pregnant. Mrs. Duffin hugged her excitedly and asked how Ross had taken the news. "Well, I haven't told him yet. I'm totally in love with him, but his travels with Victoria are something that eats me up inside. I'm very jealous. I know I shouldn't, but I can't help but feel that way." The landlady hugged her and consoled her, and then said to her, "Oh, I'm going to give you an idea to know how he really feels about you. There is an area in the house that no one but me and my late husband know about. Come, and I will show you." The two entered the main room of the mansion, where Elizabeth and Ross were sleeping. From under her jacket, the lady took out a key attached to a chain. She opened one of the cabinets and, touching the bottom, she pushed the wood and threw it to the side. As she did so, they could see a lock. Then Mrs. Duffin inserted the key and the mirror next to them moved. Elizabeth's eyes widened. There was a secret door in her room and she had never seen it. The lady grabbed the mirror and, as if it were a door, she opened it and they went inside what looked like a bunker. This construction was done in times of war. At that time, they could come look for you at your house. My husband had this secret armored and completely soundproof room created. We could see what was outside thanks to these two mirrors. One is the one that faces the room where you sleep, and the other is the bathroom mirror. And thanks to a speaker system we could hear, but no one could hear us. You could make all the noise you wanted here, and they would never find you. Elizabeth looked at that place in wonder. It was dirty and full of dust, but she teleported and traveled to a time in history where that place was a refuge and could have saved lives. It had several cans of food, a bed, and a bathroom. Obviously, it was a place with zero luxuries. And even more so in that state because it was extremely dirty from being stopped for so many years. Mrs. Duffin also showed her some cranks, moving them generated current. The two left the refuge and Elizabeth asked her how this place was going to help her know how Ross felt about her. "Well, very easy, daughter. What you can do is leave him a note telling him that you're leaving home. and that you want to take some time to think and find out where your relationship is going. And meanwhile, you will watch him from inside the room, and you will be able to see what his reaction is. If you notice that he gets sad, you already know what he wants. And on the other hand, if you see that he's happy and calls Victoria, well, you shouldn't keep wasting your time. You grab a suitcase and go live a new life. Elizabeth didn't agree with creating that displeasure for her partner. She knew that the best thing was to trust him and trust his words. But the news of her pregnancy made her doubt if Ross would be with her until the end, or if he would leave her alone with their baby and escape the responsibility of being a father. Therefore, she asked her landlady for the key to the secret room and hugged her, thanking her for her advice. The next day, the man would arrive from his trip, so she packed a suitcase with clothes so that her plan would have credibility and that Ross would think that she had really left home. Then she recorded a video on her digital camera. Looking at the camera, she told Ross her decision to leave for a while. She had to make several versions because the first ones made her laugh and it wasn't believable. From time to time, she would look out of shot to look at the sheet of paper she had hanging on the wall with the script she had created. She deleted all the versions she didn't like and left the last one, which in her opinion was the only convincing one. Suddenly she heard a noise. It was the portal of the house that opened with the arrival of Ross. Afraid of being discovered there, she quickly grabbed the suitcase and bag that she had prepared and went into the secret room that she had already left open, and with the lock covered so as not to leave clues. She slammed the mirror door shut and stared inside, waiting to see Ross's reaction. The man arrived with a smile on his face, shouting her name as he had looked for her throughout the house. Upon reaching the room, he stopped when he saw a note in the digital camera. Elizabeth was very nervous as she watched him. She felt like her heart was going to escape from her mouth. And suddenly, she felt great relief when she saw that Ross began to cry inconsolably. She blamed herself for hurting him, but she finally felt sure that her future was with him. Now she could leave that room and shout that she loved him and share the happy news that they were going to be parents. Ross, meanwhile, sat on the floor crying, watching the video she had recorded over and over again. Elizabeth considered that enough time had passed and decided to open the door. She grabbed her bag in search of her keys, and suddenly, her legs began to shake. The keys! It couldn't be! She had forgotten them in a drawer. Elizabeth began to scream at the top of her lungs, but Ross couldn't hear her. That room was completely shielded and soundproofed. No, this can't be happening to me! Ross, help me! I'm here, honey, I'm behind you! Elizabeth had been locked in and had no way of speaking to him. Furthermore, with that farewell video, it wouldn't even seem strange to him if she didn't contact him again. She grabbed her phone from her bag, but there was no mobile coverage. Then she threw a chair hard against one of the windows of the shelter, but wasn't able to create even a scratch. If no one tried to look for her there, she and her baby would end up dying locked within four walls. The days passed, and Elizabeth saw Ross wasting away every day. He was very sad. He spent a day in bed crying, and she, meanwhile, also cried behind the glass. The days turned into weeks, and suddenly, one afternoon, she was surprised to hear a female voice at home. She got up from her bed and approached the bathroom glass to hear the conversation. It was Victoria. Elizabeth, seething with rage, knowing that Ross's ex was with him at their house. From the conversation she heard, it seemed that they had met about work. They talked about clients, bills, trips. A little later, Ross went into his room to change out of his suit and into something more comfortable. Elizabeth ran to the bedroom mirror window to see what was happening. The man was taking off his jacket when Victoria, without saying a word, entered the room and hugged him. Ross looked uncomfortable, but Victoria was insistent. Elizabeth screamed, full of pain. She did it with all her strength, and she hit the glass with her fists. She didn't want to say that. She needed to throw that woman out of her house, but she couldn't do anything. Minutes later, Victoria entered the bathroom. Elizabeth was now shouting at the other window. She insulted her and ordered her to leave. The ex looked in the mirror and painted her lips, ready to use her seduction skills with Ross. Meanwhile, Elizabeth on the other side threw everything she found at the window. Victoria turned on the tap, and as the water flowed, she could hear a distant scream. The woman leaned back, scared, and screamed for help. Then Elizabeth stopped throwing objects and nervously approached the glass. Victoria had felt her. She had heard something. She yelled at her again, but the woman had already turned off the tap and there was only silence. Ross entered the bathroom, alerted by her screams, and Victoria threw herself into his arms, telling him that she had been scared. Then the woman approached the man's lips and kissed him. On the other side, Elizabeth couldn't breathe. Her heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces watching that scene. Her knees bent, unable to support the weight of her body, and she fell to the ground, becoming unconscious. The young woman opened her eyes. She didn't know how long she had passed out. She put her hands on her belly and suddenly she could notice her baby. She couldn't hold back her tears. It was the first time she noticed her little boy or girl. She didn't even know if she was still alive after the horrible conditions she was living in. She needed to get out of there. She had to get it, and not only for herself, but for her baby. The days continued, and Victoria's visits became more and more frequent. It was obvious how Ross was still unsure about starting a new relationship, often rejecting her kisses. Victoria told him that it was time to forget Elizabeth, that if she had gone and left him with a simple video, she didn't deserve that he kept crying in every corner of the house. He ended up agreeing with her. However, he asked her for more time. They would go little by little. He needed to forget Elizabeth before starting another relationship. On one of those visits in which they had arranged to have dinner and spend the night together, Ross had to leave for a work call and ask Victoria to wait for him at home. While she waited, the woman decided to take a relaxing bubble bath. She left the tub running while the bathtub was filled, and then Elizabeth yelled at her again from the refuge for taking over her life and her partner. Victoria felt something again, and Elizabeth realized it. She grabbed the chair and knocked on the window. Victoria screamed, and then she asked a question out loud. "Elizabeth, is it you?" The young woman slammed her chair, making Victoria hear it. The woman in the bathroom became very nervous. "Are you a ghost?" Elizabeth stopped hitting. "Are you trapped?" Elizabeth hit the window again with the chair, very hard. "Has Ross locked you up?" Again, the beating stopped. "Are you in front of me?" The young woman remained still without striking. She was looking at Victoria's back. "Are you behind me?" Elizabeth hit hard again. "Okay, Victoria, you're doing well. I'm here. I'm here," she shouted, crying with joy. The woman turned and looked at the mirror and understood that there was something hidden in it. She tried to remove it and see what was behind it, but she couldn't. It was sealed. Nervously, she searched the house to see if there was a way to enter some kind of secret passage, but found nothing. Searching inside the closet and feeling all the bottoms, suddenly she found a piece of wood that was moving. She slid it and could see a secret lock. She realized that it must be the lock that would free Elizabeth. On the other side of the room's mirror, the young woman was jumping for joy. Soon they would save her. Victoria searched through all the drawers for a key that would fit. It wasn't a normal size, so she had to look for a different, larger one. She looked on the table that had long been Elizabeth's, and there she saw it. A huge golden key tied to a chain. Victoria ran towards the lock, and just as she was about to insert it, something stopped her and she stepped back. "Come on, insert the key, you're almost there." But Victoria slid the wood covering the lock back, left everything as it was, and returned to the bathroom. She stared into the mirror and placing the chain around her neck and hiding the key under her shirt, she said, "I'm sorry, Elizabeth, but I will not let you come back and take Ross away from me again. He's about to love me again like before. You will never get out." At that moment, the man entered the house and asked Victoria who she was talking to. She pretended, saying she was talking to herself while looking in the mirror and asking for a hug. And then, in front of the mirror, Ross hugged her while Victoria looked with eyes full of triumph at Elizabeth. Then she asked the man to move in with her. He told her that house brought back many memories. You must do it for this reason. Memories of a love that will not return. Are you still hopeful? You've already seen it. She's gone. She doesn't love you. And you must turn the page. Staying here doesn't let you move forward. She looked at her with sad eyes and after a breath of resignation told her that she was right. In a few days, he would pack his bags and leave that house. When they separated, Ross saw the key hanging around her neck and asked her about it. Victoria told him that it was an old key that she had found around the house and that it was very fashionable to wear them as a pendant. He didn't give it any more importance and asked her to join him for dinner to celebrate their move together. If Ross left there, all of Elizabeth's chances of getting out of that place would be over. Her baby needed care. She needed more food than those old cans that were in that place. They needed sunlight. They would die and their corpses would not be mourned by anyone. Days later, when the man finished collecting his things and had a full moving truck, he called the landlady to give her the keys to the house. But the woman was admitted to the hospital and her niece took care of it. Concerned about Mrs. Duffin, he decided to go over and say hello to her and see how her health was. Seeing him, the lady was happy, although she wanted to tell him many things. The old woman had an oxygen mask and could barely speak. Her niece approached her aunt's mouth, while the old woman separated the mask and bubbled words. My auntie says, how is Elizabeth? And what name have you chosen for your baby? What baby? Was Elizabeth pregnant? Has she told you anything? She left months ago and never spoke to me again. Has she contacted you? My aunt asks you, do you know when she left the hidden room? Is there a hidden room? Mrs. Duffin, I need you to tell me everything you know. I have not heard from her again, nor does she answer my calls. I have no way to find her. The oxygen and pulse machines connected to the woman's body began to ring, alarming the nurses. The lady was getting very nervous and her health was in danger. A doctor and several nurses ran in and told the niece and Ross that they had to get out of there. Mrs. Duffin's health was very delicate and she was suffering an anxiety attack. Before leaving the room, the old woman removed the mask from her mouth and with a gasp said, She's in the room. Look for the key. Suddenly, Ross remembered the key he had seen hanging around Victoria's neck. Had she locked her up? He drove quickly to the house again and looked everywhere for an entrance to a room. He carefully touched the four walls to see if there was any hollow sound on the floor under the bed. Until touching the bottom of the closet, he noticed a different sound. He slid the wood and there it was, the log he was looking for. Desperately, he searched the entire room until a voice startled him. Are you looking for this? Victoria said as she showed him the golden key. Ross lunged at her, trying to take it away, but she started biting and kicking him. She wasn't going to make it easy for him. It was simple, you just had to forget about her. But no, you had to screw everything up. Why is she better than me? Victoria asked him as she punched him and scratched his face. Because she would never do what you have done. You knew where she was all this time. Give me the key now and get out of my life. Victoria ended up throwing the key on the floor and Ross grabbed it. Nervous and with shaking hands, he put the key in the lock and suddenly a door opened in the mirror. The man opened it and got inside. There was Elizabeth on the floor. He shouted her name and ran towards her. Suddenly, a door slammed behind him. Victoria had closed the door and had the key back in her hand. Is this what you wanted? You will stay together for all eternity. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. And if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode.